Oh, right.
That's Marvel.
Marvel. This is a nice Thor Little One design, but I'm not interested in Donny Cates or Thor if Thor doesn't have tits. This is Erin, the noisemaker.
And this is the squeaky wheel. Squeaky wheel, Jessica.
I like it. We got there. We're feeling it out. We are feeling it out.
Yeah.
So today, on this very episode,
Here and
whenever you're listening, we're going to talk about Little Bird.
time is relevant.
It's true.
What I meant was time is relative?
It's also relevant. Little Bird is a comic published by Image, and it is written by Darcy Van Poelgeest Darcy Van Poelgeest and drawn by Ian Bertram. It's a really interesting concept, this book. It follows a young resistance fighter battling against the Holy American Empire. The HAE, or as I wanted to say, the Hey. is gripped by a disfiguring and crippling disease and equipped with something called the resurrection gene.
Ooh.
Yeah. This book definitely kind of felt a little bit like a cyberpunk kind of world, but I wanted to coin the phrase biopunk, where it's like a futuristic
body horror punk.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminded me of Akira, and in fact, it had been actively compared to Akira in places that I looked at.
You're gonna have to take my anime card away from me because I've never actually watched Akira.
It's got some body horror science stuff going on for it.
I believe you.
Yeah. So this book, again, has been compared to Akira. Mm-hmm. It's also been compared to East of West and Saga for its scope, drama, and surrealism.
I can definitely see the Saga reference.
Yep. Oh, rude.
I know.
You get one.
I get one.
You get one. I got that.
Can I throw my hat in the ring?
Yeah, definitely.
The art reminds me a lot of Monstrous.
It's true. It's got a lot of like very pretty. You know what? They're surreal. That's why it reminds you of each other. Yeah. I got that information from Image Comics themselves and Previews World. That clicking you hear in the background
is me pulling out my digital copy.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna carry on this gimmick for it, right? Mm-hmm. There's one thing that I really like about this comic, and that's its covers. Now, covers are a huge component of comics for people anyway, but one thing that I like about this one is that as the comics go on, you kind of have this organ, skin, blood vessel, gore component kind of increase up the comic cover, and it does represent how the story, or reflects how the story escalates as it goes on.
Having read the digital copy, I didn't even catch that until you just... And it looks really pretty in your physical copy that you've done here.
Yes. And that's just kind of a nice narrative effect.
Yeah, it really it had something that I was missing before. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. And I really like the premise. I don't think that Darcy and Ian are Americans. I think... Anyway, so the Holy American Empire is waging a war against Canada. Mm-hmm. And they're pretty much trying to neutralize everybody who's kind of these genetically modified humans. There's a lot of imagery with wings, and there's a lot of imagery with like just animal characteristics or really intense non-human characteristics.
Yeah.
But it's very obviously hypocritical because you get introduced to the upper echelon of the Holy American Empire, mm-hmm. and they are not human anymore. Nope. And so it's just kind of a very cool conversation that as an American I find kind of interesting, and have to ask the question, how do creatives in other countries see Americans?
This is sort of like a double whammy effect against like kind of talking about our relationship with the Christian state in America, and then mm-hmm. also sort of colonialism, mm-hmm. and also there's a really intense moment where they said they've taken out everybody but a small pocket of resistance in Canada at this point, and they're like, no, I gotta finish this so that we'll be safe from criticism of our beliefs. They haven't been. Nobody has been hurt. Like, but that it's that shield of narrative that they're.
I thought a lot about that too.
Yeah.
Kind of like
discriminated against because of something that they are power for.
It to me reflects on like what is your mission? Like what's your goal versus like what are you doing? If what you're doing is shutting down people who disagree with you, then is that really the crux of the issue? And it very obviously comes down to the fact that, I mean, spoiler, they are not Christian in any sense.
But you really have this moment later on where that gets revealed to you in a very intense way, because you see sort of they keep mentioning this field where the acolytes or whatever come to, I don't know, pay homage or whatever, and then you get a look at it through the eyes of a child, basically, for the first time, and it's giant crucifixes with people nailed all the way up them.
Yeah, this is an immature comic.
Yes.
It's definitely an intense experience. But I liked it.
Yeah, because it's just that level of shock that kind of reminds me of Japanese horror done well, where it kind of takes the page flip to another level as well, where when you flip the page, you do get a payoff there, which is important.
Yeah. The Christian imagery message is countered with a very earthy, I don't want to say native, pagan kind of counter.
First Peoples, maybe?
The First Peoples, there we go. Where our hero, Little Bird, kind of has a power that stems from the earth, in a sense. There's a lot of talk about how she's from the earth. I don't want to give away specifically, like.
Well, I was just thinking, what was her mom's name? Because it was something very so that they definitely, and the art sort of in between their pictures or whatever, they're definitely pulling on Indigenous peoples of Canada. Yeah, where they have a lot more Indigenous tribes that are still covering more space there, just because of the way the environment is up there versus down here where we've you know what, we've got a couple of bogs we'll place you in America.
Yeah. So it definitely that's the theme too, is kind of Christianity versus First Peoples culture. So what did you think of the writing?
I was impressed by the sparseness of it. It's a very visual. The visuals and the art does the heavy lifting on telling you what's going on. There are a couple of bubbles, and they're packed full of information. A little bit of mood setting, but mostly just blunt force information. But it doesn't feel like exposition. It feels like those scenes like during Schindler's List where people are staring at each other from across the table, and then they say two sentences, and those sentences mean so much. That's kind of this is the comic book version of that a little bit.
Yeah, it was. The team really worked well together. I thought, kind of doing what you said they were doing. They use action to reinforce what was being said, and with lovely little twists. And I don't want to give those away, but from 4 to 5, it had a twist that I really appreciated. Which I'll talk to you off recording if you don't really know what I'm talking about. What did you think of Little Bird as a character?
I really appreciate characters that are like her, because it's a sort of piece of real estate in writing where there's a tiny female who is powered but unsure and kind of acquires power, but also acquires sort of a deadliness to that power as they are sort of put through the flames. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer gets a lot more harsh. That's just the first example I can think of, but there's a lot more of, tiny females, and sort of their tininess kind of adds to their dangerousness, because we all know that children have no conscience, and so having these kinds of world-changing, personality-changing things happen, loss of safety, loss of sanctity, all of that stuff, loss of parent figures, will make a much scarier creature in the back end. And then now we have an uncontrolled female character, which plays right into the crone and stuff, which I love so much.
Her mama done raised her right, though.
She did.
She was orphaned really young to kind of go to that loss of parental figures. Orphaned really young in the story. and maintains her resolve.
Well, because it was something she was prepared for. Yeah. So
she had her world rocked. There were a couple of reveals in here that I would be maybe not questioning what I'm doing, but I would be really at a loss, like, where would I go next? And her fortitude is like really like commendable. And there's
because the plan changes. It definitely changes. Like the things that she thought she could count on are no longer. But we knew that going in when she first got the plan sort of recited to and she was sort of kind of letting us into there's a plan, I gotta follow the plan. We knew that she was like, I feel like I'm in over my head.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite lines from her is she is kind of staring off into the distance, and there's another character who's trying to appeal to her and try to be like, we're still allies, right? And keep her focused, and all she does is turn around and go, I believe you. And I thought that was the kind of the best sentence of just like letting this person really kind of overexcite themselves. And she's just like, we're fine. I was thinking about something else entirely. I was like, how often has that happened to us? Anyway, that was just a really cool small component of it because it was a really insignificant scene. They moved on 2 panels later, but it was
resolved some stuff though. I mean, I don't think they had anything that was actually insignificant. It was putting one parentheses end, one parentheses begin. Like it was very delicate. Like I bet you if I go back and I read this again, I'm gonna pick up on so much more nuance than I did this first read. Like it is something that's I can already tell just looking at it through the first time. It's something that keeps on giving. I actually didn't write very many notes because I'm just still trying to process.
Yeah. So let's talk about the format then. So I read it in single issues.
Yes.
And you read it kind of in a trade.
I binged the shit out of it on my phone, and it's kind of when it comes to surreal stuff like this, I don't know. Some things are really benefited by that backlighting on a phone. Other things, it's just it probably is monstrous if it ever does become collected. I know they specifically said on the Image website they have no plans of collecting it anytime soon. But if it does ever become collected, it's gonna be something I own.
There's a narrative. Reading it in single issues, I thought was also really beneficial for me because 1, I get that beautiful narrative in the cover. 2, I got to sit on it. This was an issue that I read. A series that I actually tried to read as they came out, which if you read comics and you have as many comics on your subscription list as I do, is a challenge. And I actually got time to sit on the issues and reflect on what was going on. And
they do all have something to say. As a collection, it's satisfying, but you are definitely fast-forwarding through a world, and I could see the benefit of that. I don't get to do things like that, but I'm kind of jealous. It's sort of the only time I've ever experienced that was whenever I read Bitch Planet, and it does actually add to your experience. So it's like I feel bad for the kids these days because they're not going to be able to read Harry Potter every year as they get older with the characters.
That's true.
That's kind of how I'm thinking. I missed out on Little Bird. Damn it.
I have the single issues if you want to experience again.
You just give them to me once every time I see you, and I'm like, no.
So this is something I do recommend for people. As an action story, I think it's pretty good. It's and I think even as a think piece, it's really good.
Well, if we're recommending it, I do have to say that we've said it's mature. We've said it's very gory, and it's got body horror in it, but there is an implied rape of a child in it at the very beginning. So if you have issues with that kind of digesting that kind of family dynamic, I would definitely steer clear.
I would call it VM for very mature. It's got some very sensitive content in it, so be cautious when picking it up.
It's something to challenge yourself with, but some people just don't have the capacity, so I kind of want to warn them.
I feel like this is something that our friend who teaches comic classes might want to introduce at some point.
Agreed.
Yeah, it definitely, because he also teaches sociology and stuff.
And sex classes.
Yeah, there you go.
Ta-da!
Yay! Thank you for joining us for this very serious episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hopefully you stuck it out for the full, hopefully fewer than 20 minutes this thing is. So, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll check you out next time.
Bye.
Bye.